what I want to do is a couple of demos, look at a couple of things in the server as well as on the machines. I've got the server here. In here also I have a Windows XP machine, which when we do NAP should be not a non-compliant but a non-capable, because this one doesn't have all of the information on it. And the Windows 7 machine, and while we're here, wanted to go down here and show you that it does have a network access protection service, and it says it's manual, and by default you see it's off. So I'm going to go ahead and start this so that hopefully we can make this one a non-compliant and then make it compliant and see what happens with the IP addressing. We'll go back to the server. First let's talk all this, and then first thing, let's look at the firewall here just a second. The firewall itself looks just exactly like was in the picture. We have lots of different configurations here that are available in here. We have DHCP server v6 and DHCP server v4. Says profile any enabled, yes. The action is to allow, override, no. And then the program, the location of the program, any. And then we go over here, way on over here, the protocol UDP, the local port 68, and up here we have 67. 67, 68 are the two ports that DHCP are going to use. So this is going to allow DHCP, which is kind of handy since this server is running DHCP, that we actually allow the broadcasts in and the answers back out. So that one, the security configuration rules are here monitoring the connection rules, and you see I played with this one a little bit. The isolation one, these are really new rule. It's got all the information for you. Isolation, what isolation does is isolates your domain servers from non-domain clients, so that if we had a situation, well, let's say wireless, people came in and got on the wireless and were on our network, not a member of a domain, you didn't want them to be able to get to your domain resources, then you could isolate those servers. The other one down here with the server-to-server authentication exemption and those things, I think this one was a server-to-server. I don't want to enable the rule because the computers on this are these computers, everything on the .2 network to everything on the .2 network. And the authentication that you get in here require inbound and outbound requests. What would have to happen on this one is you would configure it while it's disabled so that you can still get to this machine and get addresses and things like that. I went in here and it says advanced. What I did was used a pre-shared key. You can do that if you don't have the certificate set up that's required. You can always go in, and the cheap way around without setting up all the certificate stuff, just to demonstrate what goes on in these things, is to use a pre-shared key on them. Pre-shared key can be anything, just like you use at home. This one, and we can try this out if you want once you get going on these things. This is the 192.168.2.3 machine, which has the DHCP server. We're probably not using it. And then you can do one when using the Keep Blue Rhino and see if you can then communicate with that server. So we can do isolation with those. We can do IPsec, and this one here that says key would be an IPsec sort of arrangement. And then if we had security associations, and we don't because there's nothing connected to it with IPsec, we would have the security associations in here. Advantage of being able to see this is if it's not working right, you can watch the security association attempts and see where it's failing, so that you know kind of at least what to go back to and look at. So that is the advanced security. The other, Windows Firewall, just goes in and allow a program through the firewall. This firewall obviously is enabled, otherwise I wouldn't be able to do any of the configuration. And it looks very similar to what you've seen in the past. Active Directory domain services, you just go down and list what you want. If you have to add a program, add a port, properties, not nearly as extensive a configuration as is allowed in the advanced security of the Windows. So let's see if we can, I guess we could go back to, see if we can make ourselves a NAP policy, if it ever figures out what roles are on here. I'd probably be better off just going to the policy server. You can do it again. You can do it through Server Manager, or if I can find it, LMN, Routing Remote Access, through the, I guess we'll go back over here. Network access, that's where I couldn't find it. I was looking in policy, and it starts with network. NPS, actually, I think I'm going to go back and see if I can find the administrative tool, because I think it's a little bit bigger. Network policy server, same thing in each of these things. NPS, local policy, well, if we could get the snap in added here. So, NPS local policy, and I've clicked on, it is clicked on up here, it says NPS local, network policy server. I get some options down here. It says configure NAP, network access policy. There are other things that can be configured here if you go into the drop-down. Radius server for dial-up and VPN connections, and a radius server for 802.1x. Let's go through the network access policy. And again, policies in here, connection request policies. These are the ones that we kind of looked at, the Microsoft Routing and Remote Access, use Windows Authentication for all users, things that we looked at in the last chapter that get in here. Network, allow VPN access, we did that one. Those are there. Health policies, NAP DHCP compliant, NAP DHCP non-compliant. These are default policies that are in here, and we'll be able to configure these things. So let's go back to do this thing, configure NAP. I'll go in here, and we're going to use DHCP again because it is the easiest one. This one names it. I have done this one before. Obviously, NAP DHCP2 is going to be the name of the policy. I've done it a couple of times. I went back. I thought I had them all deleted, but obviously I don't have them all deleted. So that will be ours. Radius clients, if we had radius clients, we could add those. Remember, the radius client's the one that's asking the question, not the supplicant that's trying to get on to the resource. We don't have any, so we can go next here. DHCP scopes, we can either add the scopes now or we can add the scopes later. Add, and you got to go through to specify the profile name and all that other stuff. So I think what I want to do is when we get through, we'll go to the DHCP server and enable NAP for that one. What I did find out when I was looking at this thing, I don't know if I've been giving DHCP addresses to people out there on the 6064 network, but it was enabled for that one. I've turned it off now. Should be only on the ones that we are using. Machine groups, if we had machine groups that did not grant or deny access to groups of computers, so we can further limit or further restrict or further control what we actually do here. I'm not going to do any of these things. A remediation group, I don't have a remediation group. If we didn't have one, we can make a new group. If we had a remediation group, we could do that. That's where we're going to put our machines in. And then if you have instructions for people, help, frequently asked questions or something like that, you can put that address down here. Windows Server Health Validator, and it says network access restrictions for NAP ineligible client machines. NAP ineligible would be the old stuff, and I think my XP machine is probably going to be NAP ineligible because it doesn't have the service packs and it doesn't have the NAP client on it. It says that we will deny full access, which means that those guys are not going to be able to do a whole lot of anything. Next, and then finish. Okay, and now then. Okay, go to the Health Network Access Protection, and then we'll configure the system health validation of these things. This one is already configured, and you notice we have a grand total of 1. Settings, in here, the Systems Health Validator unable to contact required services with non-compliant or compliant. The default is non-compliant for all these things to give you the protection. In the Configure module, what do we want to look at? These say Windows Vista, works for Vista or Windows 7 on these things. Let's look for, we got a firewall is enabled, an antivirus application is on, anti-spyware is on, automatic updates. The ones that I have, I turned off the firewall, and we don't have antivirus because we don't use those on them, so we won't do that. Windows XP machines, it probably shouldn't make any difference because I think that one's going to wind up being non-compliant. If it were a Windows XP Service Pack 3 machine, we could use this. Our firewall is enabled. We can apply OK and OK with these things. Now then, administrative tools, let's go to DHCP. And in the DHCP, we'll go to IPv4, properties, and then the network access protection. Enable all scopes or disable on all scopes. You can enable or disable on individual scopes for this. I only have the one scope, so we will enable it on all scopes, and it says full access DHCP. When the NPS is unreachable, we can configure it full access, restricted, or drop the client. More configurations in this one. Now then, let's see if we've broken anything. Should be able to go back to this guy and make me a liar. Release, and then let's try renew. Don't you love how fast these things do renew? And when I get here, something's missing. Look at the IP address. I got an IP address. And look at the subnet mask. Subnet mask is 255.255.255.255. It has a network of 1. And it doesn't have a default gateway. So, looks like it worked, huh? Probably, I said, probably a non-compliant machine. It doesn't have a firewall on, and I guess we could check it out here and see if it's Windows Firewall. Turn it on, and this should tell us, and I guess we should look and see. I know it's not Service Pack 3. Renew on this one. Da-da-da-da-da-da. Don't you love how fast these do this? We should get the same result. At least it's thinking about it, isn't it? Yeah. I'm going to pause the recording while. Unable to contact my DHCP server. What changed? What did I do? I turned the firewall on. The firewall won't let me out. Firewalls, how you configure them? The XP machine is not as easy for the firewall configuration as the Vista machines are. Probably not quite as smart. Let's go over here to the Vista machine, the 7 machine, control panel, and I think this firewall was on. This is the one we just looked at, right? Windows Firewall. Oh, firewall's off. That was the other one I looked at the firewall. So what should happen when I get the IP address here now? If I could spell release, it would work better. And these go really, really fast, as you have noticed. The IP configuration on the Windows 7 machines takes forever.
Does it have to do the IPv6?
That's what I thought. That IPv6, and I turned IPv6 off, and it still took forever. I'm going to pause the recording while it does this. Back on the recording, an IP config, we get the same result. Would you expect the same result? If my client worked because the firewall's off, and that was my one restriction on this, that the firewall had to be turned on, right? One of the things I want to look at before we go any further here real quick is look at the route print command. The route print command shows us all of the routes. And if we had a regular address, it would tell us that we had a default route. Active routes 127.0.0.1. We're missing a lot of stuff. We don't have the default gateway. We don't have that default route. We should have the 192.168.2.178.255.255.255 On the link in the interface is 192.168.2.178. So again, we have a network of 1. So let's see if our client works. Let's go in here and turn the firewall on and off. Let's turn the firewall on for everybody. Okay, and I'm going to turn the recording off, maybe, while we do this. Okay, now that the access protection really is running, started, and the firewall is enabled again, firewall is turned on. IP config, we get the, we just renewed this, we get the default gateway and the 255.255.0 address so that we can now go places. And if we do the route print, we should have a default route 0.0.0 that goes to the mask 0.0.0 that goes to the gateway. The key to this one is to have the service turned on, and also the enforcement clients need to be configured to check what's going on the system. Map is a handy tool that can be used on a domain. You can make domain policies to configure it for your machines using it as a domain policy, or you can configure it individually on your access servers. With